Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This for UFC Vegas 30. I'm Paul Shaughnessy, joined on the line by Cody Saftic, as always. Coming off of, I profited last week, but you lose the main event. I gave a whole bunch back. It wasn't anything to write home about, but I got away kind of unscathed on that card, where it seemed like a lot of people had a real rough time. Parisian getting that decision nod. Oh. That really was the savior of the night, to be perfectly honest. Those types of situations, it's gonna flip the coin each way in certain situations. I happened to be on the wrong side of Jake Collier the week before, and the right side of a greasy heavyweight decision in this one. So you take what you can get. But got away relatively unscathed, but just felt like Ige was just the wrong side. It was bad. He couldn't get out of that body lock. It was kind of frustrating, but it is what it is. We dust ourselves off and move on to the next card. How are you doing this week, bud?
Yeah, you don't got to tell me about bad takes from last week, because my God. Now, if I was responsible, then last week could have been a slight profit. We got the top ticket, our two most favorable fighters on the card. We got a +109 out of it. It's betting the rest of it, which I thought would be a shit show, and turned out to be a shit show. So from that standpoint, absolutely blown up. Even my props, I think, went slightly under 50-50. But again, and when you factor in juice and all that, not a good night from any standpoint whatsoever, other than entertainment. It was a fun card, but we got to do better than that. So I'm interested in this offering from the UFC coming up. And the fact that you turned last week into a slight profit, good on you. This week seems like it's a little more trustworthy, a little more guys that you can have some trust in. But again, they're just churning out so many fights. So many guys are owed fights on their contract still, that you're getting just a random bunch of matchups. Are these guys prepared? Are they not? Will the layoffs factor in? Will they not? Guys like Danilo Marques is super untalented, yet he's 2-0 in the UFC. What is going on here, Paul Shaughnessy? I don't know, but that's why I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you, bud.
All right, let's get right into the action then. We got Ciryl Gane taking on Alexander Volkov, -170 Gane, +145 Volkov. Went back and watched the Gane fight. And Bisping, the commentary from Bisping in that fight is just completely unfair. He's taking on Jairzinho Rosenstrike. He's got a significant reach advantage over him. He's pumping out the jab. He goes for a flying knee at one point. He's doing things. He's just not a murderous finisher. And that's just the way you're going to have to deal with Ciryl Gane. But I thought it was actually kind of a masterclass performance. I was on Gane in the spot, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like rewatching it going, Bisping's talking about he's not going to make any new fans or anything like that. I thought it was completely unfair, to be perfectly honest. I see a lot of people out there taking the shot on Volkov in the spot. And Volkov is in the highlight of his career. We've never seen him any better. Absolutely just put a clinic on against Alistair Overeem last time out. He's definitely coming into his own. He's in his prime, 32 years old, 31 for Ciryl Gane here. Interestingly enough, Gane actually still has a 2-inch reach advantage over Volkov here. And watching that Rosenstrike fight, I feel like Gane's just too fast, and he snaps that jab out just so much throughout that fight. I just don't know if there's really anybody in the division that can stop it. And when we've seen him test it a little bit, when we've seen him, get that chin clipped a little bit, the chin seems to hold up. So I'm leaning towards Gane here. I haven't made a bet on it whatsoever. I think it's probably close to around right, to be perfectly honest. I think he wins about 65% of the time. What is it? 175 on the board here. 150 would be 60% of the time. There's obviously a little bit of question. This is a big step up. It's a great test for him. But I think I've always thought that this guy was elite. I didn't necessarily think that Volkov was elite at any point in time. So I'm not jumping off the horse. I see a lot of people taking the shot on Volkov. That's not going to be me. What about you?
Yeah, you know what? You want to get it on the opener at -135 Gane, because it is a close fight. Now that it's at -165, doesn't look as appealing, but I think it's still the right call. I think you got to go with Ciryl Gane and take it from a guy who's a massive Alexander Volkov and you recognize all the weapons Volkov has. He has good cardio. He's very long and rangy for this weight class. And I mean, he's putting in that body of work. You know, he works the body. He's got that teep straight up the middle. But keep in mind, right, he's on a career best run right now. 32, like you mentioned, this is prime of his career, especially at heavyweight. But this run he's on, like if you want to play devil's advocate, you could make this point. The last fight with Alistair Overeem, you beat a guy that's 41 years old who then was released from the promotion. But it was a good, nice win. You know, we'll credit him there. The Walt Harris fight, you fought a guy that's currently on a 3-fight losing streak, has lost all those 3 fights inside the distance, hasn't looked himself in a very long time, really. You know, not all that impressive, right? The Curtis Blades fight, he gets taken down a career high. I think it might be a record, UFC record, 14 times he's taken down by Curtis Blades. Although I credit him for his get-up game in that fight and for the 5th round, coming out strong. Cardio, again, good. You know, Greg Hardy, you fought an NFL lineman. He lost the Derek Lewis fight, but oh man, he really should have won that Lewis fight. Again, it's like, even though he's coming into his own, even though looks like he's getting ready for a title shot, they've matched him up fairly soft. Whereas Gane, meanwhile, again, matched up fairly soft. He has no experience. Volkov had 30 fights. He was a former Bellator champion. He fought a who's a guy on the regional scene in Russia before coming to the UFC, and now he's coming to his own. Gane's that real deal that just didn't quite have the experience. And now that he's putting the experience together, he's becoming very scary. I mean, again, they book him to fight Junior Dos Santos, a former world champion, and he's 6-0 at the time. He's 6-0. He's taking on a former world champion in Junior. And by the way, smokes Junior. First round, excellent. See, and again, see where he's still green and learning. In the first round, he's beating Junior. And for whatever reason, like tail end, maybe like mid-ish through the first round, he decides to brawl with Junior, right? Steps in the pocket, throws 2 big hooks, and Junior clips him. And you see him step back, and it's like an acknowledgement of like, whoa, what am I doing? I'm having so much success from the outside with the jab and leg kicks. I'm going to go back to fighting discipline. Goes back, and then Junior's leg buckles. And in the second round, Junior's a standing target. That jab stuns him. The elbow puts him away. Perfect performance. He's 6-0. So Rosenstruck fight, even though a lot of people say, oh, it's boring. And this guy's not really, I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be Francis Ngannou because he's a training partner of him. They're both French heavyweights. No. He's a completely different guy. This guy's a tactician. This guy's a surgeon. This guy takes his time, and maybe it doesn't result in those big highlight reel finishes, but he's got all the skills in the world. So the Rosenstruck fight, you say it's boring, but the way I see it is he wins all 5 rounds, right? He wins all 5 rounds comfortably. And like you said, it's not up to him to lead the dance. I don't know what Bismuth's talking about. If anything, Rosenstruck needs to let his hands go. In what world does a guy land 102 significant strikes plus 2 takedowns? He should have done more. What more should he have done? Doesn't make sense to me. But the key here is that he gets the 5 rounds in him because, again, you know, cardio looks good in 3, but his ability to pace himself and his ability to stay out of harm's way out from one of the division's biggest power punchers, that's all good stuff, man. So how does he develop beyond this? It's only sky's the limit for him. Now keep in mind, you know, French heavyweight, same team as Francis Ngannou. Francis was really taken far out of MMA Fight Factory Paris. Went really far with them, but really he had to go to Extreme Couture in Vegas. Or is he at Syndicate? I think he's at Syndicate. Anyways, regardless, he had to go to Las Vegas to really get to that next level. So in Gane's case, his last 2 camps have been at American Top Team. And Paul, this is where we're seeing the improvements. His last 2 fights have been the best for him. So Volkov's got great output, but so does Gane. Again, Gane's, you know, 102 landed against Rosenstruck. The Junior fight, it only goes 7 minutes, and he's already got 59 strikes landed, a lot of which are, you know, big strikes. The Dante Mays fight, 94, like output's not a problem for him. So as far as them matching each other, perfect. The one thing that I noticed is that Volkov is hittable. He stands upright, and for a guy that has an 80-inch reach, doesn't really use his length all that much. He stands a little bit too close to his opponents, and they hit him back. When you look at Ciryl Gane, he manages distance so incredibly well that it's not just he has good output, but he doubles up or triples up every single opponent he's fought in the UFC. So the Rosenstruck fight, it's 102-42. The Junior fight, it's 59-10. The Boser fight, it's 65-32. He doubles him up. The Mays fight, 94-32. He triples him up. The Pessoa fight, whatever, it doesn't last all that long, but he doubles him up 15-7, right? It's his ability to hit and not get hit, with essentially is what martial arts is all about. Now, the last thing, because I probably sound like a rambling man here, but one thing I haven't heard anybody talk about, so I want to make a point of bringing this up, because I think it'll be the game changer here, is the leg kicks, right? So remember how I said that I thought Volkov's been matched up properly. Hasn't been fighting the worst guys to his game. He's been fighting guys that allow him shine, get on a nice little winning streak, and get headlining fights. But keep in mind The Alistair Overeem does not attempt to kick his leg. I think he maybe goes like 8 for 8 on leg kicks, but it's not a part of his game. Walt Harris not attempting to leg kick. Curtis Blades obviously not attempting to leg kick, although Curtis Blades lands a ton of leg kicks in that fight, almost at will. Greg Hardy, again, nothing to it. When you look at Cyril Gane, this is extremely interesting to me. These are the last 2 fights, right? So his fight with Junior Dos Santos, he lands 29 of 32 leg kicks. 29. That's a lot of leg kicks, Paul. 29 of 32, excellent percentage, lots of leg kicks. He only lands 13 strikes to the head, but 29 leg kicks, and also 17 to the body. It's all about working that lead leg. And Junior's leg buckles after one single round of taking these 29 leg kicks. That's what leaves him compromised in the next fight. Now you look at the Rosenstruck fight. It's beautiful work again, right? Because again, people say it's boring. He lands 46 of 61 leg kicks in that fight. Only lands 33 strikes to the head. Fucking leg kicks, man. Maul this guy, slow him up. And because Volkov's tall, 6'7", you mentioned Gane has the 1-inch reach advantage. Fair. Gane's more compact. He's more built for battle. Volkov is tricky. He's tough to work with. People have trouble figuring it out. But I think the leg kicks are going to neutralize him, slow him down. That's only going to make the jab more effective for Gane. Gane has 5-round cardio. He has an ability to pace himself. His takedown defense is pretty rock solid. Last but not least, they're fighting at the Apex. It's a smaller cage. That's going to allow Gane to press Volkov up against the cage. And when Volkov's had that problem his entire career, he's easy to control.
He's definitely
against
a lot
cage.
better than the guy who got grapple fucked by Kelly Anunson back in Bellator. In fairness,
he's come a long way because, like you said, he's entering his prime now. He's confident and he's added a lot of skills, right? But fundamentally, when he's pressed up against the cage, guys have a lot of success there against him, right? Even in his victories, the same thing remains. Gane doesn't like to spend a ton of time there, but he will back you up. He will control you there, just like the Junior fight, and he will fish for a few takedowns as well.
Too,
Yeah, so it's all there for him to put together. And again, -135, much better price tag because this is a good fight. This figures to hit the over 3.5 at least. I don't know if it goes the distance because again, if you're gonna put your guy's lead leg, keep him there. And Gane's got underrated power. People say he's got no power. He's 6'4", 240 pounds, pal. Like you know what I mean? If you're a standing target and he hits you, just like the Junior fight, I keep going back to the Junior fight. But again, we've only got a limited pint-sized portion to work with, but I'm ultra impressed in what I've seen. I gotta back him. I know there's a lot of Volkov love out there. I hear you. Don't hate me too much, but I'm going with Cyril Gane.
All right, we're on the same page. We got Tanner Boser taking on Ovens St. Preux. Tanner Boser -175 favorite. OSP can be had for +150. OSP was supposed to take on Max Grecian at 205 pounds in this spot. Boser obviously fought like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Took on Latifi, lost a questionable, one that I profited off of, but questionable decision to the Sledgehammer, who really didn't have very much.
He won. It was a bad fight, but he did win. Latifi won that fight fair and square.
The ticket cashed. It was close. He did what he had to do, as we were hoping that he would do. OSP at heavyweight. I know that he missed weight in his last time out, but OSP at heavyweight, he looked very, very. He's not very fast at 205. Maybe that's why he tried to take on Ben Rothwell, but he looked completely out of place in that Rothwell fight. If you go back to when he did fight at heavyweight, speed advantage is going to be on Boser's side in this situation. Can OSP land takedowns and maybe work some of his submission game though? That's the real question here. I think the speed, and I'm not too confident in OSP at heavyweight going in to get takedowns and control the fight that way. That's why I would lean towards Tanner Boser here, but he didn't look great against Ilir Latifi, so it's not a spot that I really love. What about you?
Yeah, okay, so first and foremost with Tanner Boser, which he is going to be the pick, is that there's got to be buyer beware right off the hop. He's lost his last 2 fights. Both of them, you can make the argument, are questionable decisions, and both of them they're as favorites, right? So he's a -370 favorite over Andrei Arlovsky. I felt he won. The judges did not agree. He loses the fight. And then they feed him, not you, but they feed the public a -175 Boser against Latifi. Now, the argument in that fight is that he loses 1 in 3 because of the takedowns. Fair, right? The second round, he kicks Latifi's ass, but not quite enough for a 10-8. Stuns him, near finish, I suppose. but maybe not quite that 10-8. So draw at worst, but first and third for Latifi on the takedowns. Where the argument comes into place is that how does Latifi win the first round? Landing one single significant strike. This is a fight. It's not a wrestling match. So if you're of that thought process, it's like, yeah, no, Latifi really didn't do anything. So there's spots that you can like from Boser in those fights, but now he's lost 2 straight tickets as a favorite, both times, as a should have been a comfortable favorite. They're now giving you a minus 185 price tag, and we got to jump back at once again, right? We know that Canadians haven't had a great run in the UFC. John McDessie was the last one to win. That was over 2 months ago now. He doesn't really have any heavyweight training partners in Canada, nor does his gym have a ton of training partners in general. So I don't want to, I'd rather him even money. I'd rather him as an underdog. I'd rather him being overlooked, but it seems like everybody's on him every time. And then the line reflects that. With OSP though, yeah, his best days are behind him. So we're partly betting Tanner Boser because we saw some glimpses and maybe he's going to get let back. And Latifi fight quick turnaround, which is all good to see. But we're not really confident on Tanner Boser. What we are looking to do here is to fade one OSP and think that he's just kind of at the tail end of his run. Keep in mind, when he fought Ben Rothwell, that's his lone heavyweight fight. He was scheduled to fight Shamil Gamzatov, right? Gamzatov pulls out. He draws Ion Kudalaba. Kudalaba pulls out. So they book him 2 weeks later up at heavyweight. So this is almost mirroring that. He has a fight booked versus Grishin at 205. And when that gets falls apart, sorry, I'm too big. My fight got canceled last night, my manager said, so I went for a meal. Like, I don't know what it is, but he's not doing it voluntarily per se. He's doing it because the opportunity arises itself because of these short notice fights. But then you go back to the Jamahal Hill fight, and this is what's most telling, right? So OSP is now 37 years old. He's 38 now, but going into the Hill fight, he's 37 years old. It looks like writing is on the wall. He's struggling with these younger guys, but he's coming off a huge win over Alonzo Menefield. But at this point, the guy's been a professional for well over a decade, and he has 39 professional fights, and never once in his career has he ever missed weight. So him missing weight there, very telling that his body's not agreeing with him. The cut to 205 is too much. He's been looking lethargic in a lot of these fights. He tried heavyweight against Ben Rothwell, but he got mauled. And that wasn't a bad showing from him. It was a really good showing from Rothwell. Rothwell just marches him down the entire time and puts so much pressure on him. I don't know if Tanner Boser fights that same style. But as it turns out, part of the reason he missed weight is because he's got a bunch of lingering injuries. That should come as no surprise to anybody. But again, this is his body saying no mas. So him versus Max Grishin is actually a winnable fight for him because he's fighting Max Grishin. But to now take a heavyweight fight is just a tough task. And like Boser's not a particularly small guy. He's going to have that size advantage. He's going to have the speed advantage. He's going to have, I think he's durable enough to take OSP's best shots. And I think he's big and strong enough to stuff the takedowns. I mean, yeah, OSP's path to victory is get the fight to the ground, but he's not a guy that like shoots blast doubles. He's not a guy. He's more of a guy that like leans on you, like drags on you. I just don't know if it's enough. Latifi can do it. He's a short little fire hydrant power wrestling house out of Sweden. Yeah. That I can understand. A lot of those Russians that Boser fought when he was touring that scene, yeah, they were going to get him down. But as far as like mediocre wrestlers, I think he keeps the fight standing. I think he outworks him in the long run. So I got to go with Boser, but I want to say I learned my lesson on those last 2 losses. So I don't want too much exposure on him. I don't want to completely write off OSP, but I can't back OSP.
I'm with you there. All right, we got Raoni Barcelos taking on Timur Valiev. Minus 220 Barcelos, plus 185 Valiev. Your boy, Raoni.
My boy.
I imagine you're probably picking him in here. You love this guy.
Paul, we've cashed 5 straight tickets on Raoni Barcelos. Unfortunately, 3 of those tickets were really not worth talking about because we had a Khalid Taha minus 435, a Carlos Huation minus 1100, and a Chris Gutierrez minus 505, right? So we cashed him 1 time as an even money against Said Nurmagomedov, and we cashed him 1 time as a plus money play against Kurt Holoba. Who set the line on that one? But my boy, like you said, the UFC has done my boy dirty. I have a bone to pick with UFC matchmakers, UFC brass, doing Raoni Barcelos dirty like this. First and foremost, if this is creative fighter, we're playing a video game, we're putting in our stats. Raoni Barcelos is the creative character that I make, right? He is so unbelievably well-rounded in every facet of what compromises of mixed martial arts. So striking, man, technical boxing, nice, crisp, compact, good jab on him, good counter right. Counter punching is good. He fights off his back foot well. He moves forward fighting well, right? That's his boxing. Kickboxing, solid. Leg kicks all day, sets them up nice, big power, goes with the calf and the thigh, mixes it up well. Timing is good, all of that. As far as his striking goes, checks out. As far as his wrestling goes, wrestled on the Brazilian national team. Wrestling solid. You know, ring IQ, solid. When he needs those takedowns, he goes to it. Power, good. BJJ, black belt. Cardio, on point. Chin, never been knocked out. What's there not to like about Raoni Barcelos? So he comes to the UFC, he's the RFA champion. It's like, move him along, pal. He's got all the skills in the world. But you know what they do? They give him Kurt Holoba. He's the underdog. He needs to prove himself to the wider audience. So he goes out there. He got hit too much in the Holoba fight. Maybe that was him, a little eager UFC debut, this and that. He's looked a lot cleaner since then. But all the same, he goes out there, knocks Holoba in the third, gets a performance bonus out of it. Cool, right? Now you give him Chris Gutierrez. Okay, you know, I guess it's his second fight in the UFC. So we'll take the Chris Gutierrez fight. We're a 5-1 favorite. Shouldn't really be there. But he walks right through Chris Gutierrez. Cool. So now we get Carlos Huachin. Okay, he's an 11-1 favorite. You never see that in the UFC because fights like that don't get booked. But he gets the fight and he walks right through Huachin. Now he gets Said Nurmagomedov. Skill-wise, this is a good test. This is a tough guy. Here's my beef with that, Paul, right? He's not getting any younger, man. He's 34 years old by the time he fights Nurmagomedov. He needs to be fighting ranked guys. They've given him no ranked guys. And the first step up in competition he gets is a dude no one's heard of. A badass no one's heard of. Who's got legitimate striking. Not related to Khabib, by the way, but family friend. But it's just very well-rounded, okay? Not ranked, no experience in the UFC. Broader audience doesn't know him. What does beating Said Nurmagomedov do for Raoni Barcelos? It doesn't get him a ranked competitor. He just beat a guy nobody heard of. And it's a tough fight. And boy, oh boy, this one is a tough fight. You know, he walks through the other three guys, but I mean, Nurmagomedov stretches him to his limits. But that's where we bank on that high ring IQ from Raoni. He does exactly what he needs to do. He loses the first, say, 3 minutes of the first round on the basis of he's having difficulty reading Said Nurmagomedov's timing, right? The spinning attacks there all day, spinning back into the body, the spinning back fist. He just can't quite gauge it. But he walks him down the last 2 minutes. He hurts him to the leg. He scores a brief takedown, takes the back. This, as far as I'm concerned, this is a Barcelo first round, but it is very close. Second round, more of the same. I personally, probably because I'm a Raoni guy, I gave him the second round as well. I scored the fight 30-27, but it's probably 1-1. The judges got it 1-1. The fans got it 1-1. Raoni really needs to step this thing up. He hasn't had a ton of success with the takedowns during the fight, but he hasn't relied on it. And there's 2 minutes left in that third round. Again, this is a close fight, could go either way. And now that spinning attack, he had it read to a T. Ring IQ on point. Timing on point, ability to make switches on the fly. As soon as he scores that takedown in the third round, it's all Raoni all day. That seals him that third round. That sealed that fight on 2 of the 3 scorecards. He takes out the split decision. And even though his stock should go way up, they don't give him anything. They give him Khalid Taha. You know, like what the fuck is going on here, Paul? Now I get that they tried to give him Rob Dvalishvili, but because he had just fought 3 weeks earlier, the commission wouldn't allow it. They try to give him Rafael Assunção bails. They try to give him Marcelo Rojo as a replacement. No, Paul, this is not an acceptable replacement. Why do they keep doing this?
Well, he got COVID.
Nobody wants to fight Raoni. Nobody wants to fight Raoni. No. And then finally, Timur Valiev. And so again, this is a really good fight. This is a tough fight. Valiev is a non-ranked opponent who is 1-1 in the UFC, represents a very risky fight with a very talented guy, and almost no upside for a now 34-year-old Raoni Barcelos. Man, come on, give him a returning TJ Dillashaw, give him someone ranked, give him O'Malley, give him Marlon Vera, give him Jose. Fuck, man, what the more does he have to do? But
none of those guys are signing the dotted line against your boy.
And you know why? Because they're like, who? No one's heard of him. Who's he fought? It's not his fault. You know, he'll fight anybody. Anyway, so let's talk about the fight itself. Again, I'm gonna go with Raoni, but I'll get his balls out of my mouth real quick and talk about Valiev, because Valiev's not a walkthrough opponent. The issue there that I have with him is that the 2 losses that he's had, right? Big favorite, lost both times. The Chris Gutierrez fight, he's a -475, and then obviously that debut with Trevin Jones in the UFC where he's a -600, right? The way he fights, though, is he's a ball of fire that first 5 minutes. He puts a lot of pressure on guys. He brings it. He throws a lot of unorthodox strikes. He loves the question mark kick. He loves the knee up the middle. The long-standing, like, you know, saying on him was he'll never throw the same strike twice because he's just got such a wide variety of strikes. But once he fails to take you out, that's when I think his game starts to fall apart a little bit. And you notice that in the Chris Gutierrez fight in World Series of Fighting, where he's tentative. He never really gets his game going, loses the fight. But since then, I mean, they booked him really soft. He fought a lot of softer guys. Now he gets to the UFC. He's a 6-1 favorite. Again, on paper, they give him a very soft opponent. You can make a very strong case that fight should have been stopped in the first round. He absolutely put a mauling on him with the body shot. It wasn't like he had him knocked out or anything, but yeah, I mean, his body was seized up. But you see in the second round, his body language completely changed. And now not quite as willing to throw these flashy strikes. The speed's not quite there. He's a little more hesitant. And then the shot that knocks him out, I'm not saying he's chinny. I'm just saying I wouldn't feel comfortable betting this guy. And now Trevin Jones got a lot of power, so we give him a pass. We'll give him the pass. You know, they say he's Russian Frankie Edgar, and he's a tyrant in the gym, and he's only getting better, this and that. Cool. So now you go back to that Martin Day fight. And then, so this is where I got to drop narrative here. But in the Martin Day fight, you still have all those striking skills. You still have a huge advantage standing. You should be able to go out there and maul Martin Day, who just got knocked out by Davy Grant. He's 0-3 in the UFC at this point. Why are you even booked against him? I don't know, but Ali's your manager, so you're going to get these type of fights. This is a walk in the park. And you know what he did not want to do in that fight? He didn't want to strike. He relied on his wrestling. Took him down, Martin Day down every round, and controlled him on the ground. That's how he won, and he won a decision. You know, good decision, but not a great decision. So against Raoni, you're not going to take him down, pal. So now you're forced to stand with him, whether you want to or not. And I think he's going to have a lot of success early, say the first 4 or 5 minutes. But Raoni's going to continuously back this guy up. Raoni's going to break him. Raoni's going to score those takedowns late. He's got the better cardio. He's got the durability. He's going to put it on him. At the very least, because this Raoni price tag, again, they're not going to give you a great Raoni Barcelos price tag, as they never do. I think you might be able to bet it live after the first round as well. And that Valiev will probably be close and competitive in that first round before you start to see that durability and pace pull away for Barcelos and maybe get a better price than this 225. But my guy, I don't go against my guy. I'm going to ride with him here again too.
I'm with you as well. All right, we got Andre Touchy Fili taking on Daniel Pineda, minus 225. Fili, plus 190. Pineda. I mean, Pineda, you were talking about like ball of fire coming out. Like that's kind of what he does. He's going to come out. He's going to try to like take over the fight immediately. And we've seen him struggle down the stretch. On the other side of the thing, it's like we got Fili, who, I mean, obviously he's had some really tough matchups along the way. He's fought, you know, everybody inside the top 10 or top 15 to 5 of the division, you know, pretty regularly. The chin has always been very, very solid for him. His grappling's like, I mean, he gets exploited against guys like Bryce Mitchell, but the grappling's usually pretty solid. He's just a well put together fighter. I don't know if he's ever going to be elite. I'm picking Fili in this spot, but minus 225, the price doesn't feel great. The one good thing I think is that, yeah, his durability has really held up pretty much every single fight. Like the guy's tough. He doesn't get knocked out very easily. And if this does go to the mat, he knows what he's doing down there. He's not a complete fish out of water. So I'm picking Fili. I was even looking up to see like Fili by decision, but that's only like plus 150, plus 160. Not really enough to get me too excited about it. What's your take on this fight, Cody?
Yeah, okay, so this is the first fight that when I first looked at it, I was like, hey, there's a real underdog possibility here in Daniel Pineda who could replicate a lot of the past successes of other Fili opponents in that he's strong, he's physical, he's big for the weight class, he can get this fight to the ground, BJJ black belt. As far as his stand-up goes, man, he is heavy. He throws heavy strikes, big on the leg kicks, big on that overhand right. Guy's tough, he's durable, he's got a massive wealth of just experience. I mean, he's been around for a long time, but it goes back to that durability that you're talking about. Because if you want to talk about a fight on a numbers perspective, Daniel Pineda's got what, 27 pro wins, right? Mm-hmm. All 27 pro wins inside the distance, which is just one of the craziest things you'll ever see in ever, right? In MMA anyways. Now, he was 2-0 in PFL, goes out there, world beater, and then it turns out he's on the juice. And both of those wins were inside the distance too. Like that's all he does is go out there and crush people, right? Mm-hmm. He's entertaining, he's exciting, but therein lies the problem. In a 13, 14-year pro career, right, with 50 pro fights, 27 wins, he's never won a decision, which would seriously suggest that the only way he defeats Andre Fili is inside the distance. And Fili is just one durable dude. Has he been dropped? Yeah, he's been dropped before against guys like Cody Saftic, like tough guys in the division. He's fought a lot of good dudes. The Charles Jourdain fight, that's like the perfect shot, man. You'll never see a punch land or cleaner than that. Like, it completely snaps his head back, turns him sideways, and the second his body hits the ground, he's completely aware of everything that's going on. He's fought in Michael Johnson, who's a murderous power puncher. Shayman Moraes, who's not murderous, but a big power puncher. Artem Lobov, who a lot of people will tell you is the GOAT of the power department. He went the distance with Calvin Kattar, who's just a strong, precise striker. And then you say, okay, well, he did get knocked out that one time versus Yair Rodriguez. He got poked in the eye, and as he was trying to address it, flying head kick. Like, okay, could that knock out Fili? Sure. Same way he got submitted one time with a flying triangle by Pepe. He's super durable. So how does Pineda win this fight, right? Pineda has the wrestling to take Fili down the same way Bryce Mitchell did early, just use that strength. Like, Pineda's big for the weight class. Go watch him versus Cub Swanson. Even the commentators are mentioning, they're like, it looks like Pineda's a weight class up. And Pineda had been on record prior to that fight saying, I know how big I am at this weight class, and I want to showcase my wrestling. He wasn't able to do it against Cub because, again, he's not a decision guy. And so he's winning the first 3 minutes of the Cub fight. But once he fails to put Cub away, he falls apart. The Herbert Burns fight, ain't nobody falls apart faster than Herbert Burns. So even if you were to get tired, which he did, he got taken down in the second round. He gave up his back in the second round. And then there's a shitty ass scramble that literally happens like it's underwater, man. It's in slow motion. And Herbert Burns, you can see him think in real time and just be like, nah, fuck it, I'm done with this. And then just bails and allows Pineda to have the victory. One thing about Fili is that he fights hard all 3 rounds. You even look at the Sodiq sub fight. He loses the first 2, and the third round's his best round. Doubles him up in the strikes, backs him up. The Bryce Mitchell fight, probably it's 1-1. It's 1-1 going into the third round. Bryce is having a ton of success with the takedowns, but you know who never quits? Fili. You know who explodes and keeps getting back up, gives up mount, gets back up, lands the better of the striking? Fili. He always fights through to the end. So this one, I think, more so than the last fight, Paul, it'd be a great live betting opportunity where you can have a nice Daniel Pineda plus money ticket right now, and then you'll probably get a near even money ticket potentially after the first if Pineda goes and puts it on him. But regardless, we're making picks. We're got guys that we're going to have to parlay this and that and trust level. I think that this is going to be a big time sweat for a round and a half. And then I think Fili should pull away. And whether this goes to decision, Pineda has lost 5 decisions. So it's not like, he needs to get put away himself. If he gets tired the way he did in that Cub fight, then eventually he's just a sitting target and Fili might be able to tee off on him a little bit. So I don't get a great gauge of inside the distance or decision. And with Pineda, it's almost always a rest assured it's an inside the distance. But with Fili, because he's more of a decision guy, it kind of like contradicts itself a little bit. But your assessment was Andre Fili, and I came to that same conclusion as well.
Yeah, I know. It's a tricky, I find it's a tricky card this week because, like, as you were talking, I wrote down Fili Pineda under 2.5 minus 110, but it's just like I already was kind of thinking, Fili just outlasts, is able to survive. He's been very, very durable, except for against some elite fighters. So yeah, it's probably a better stay away. Definitely a fight that you should pay attention to live because Fili could be really up against the ropes, but you notice that Pineda's struggling, is starting to slow down a little bit. And that's when touchy-feely takes over. All right, we got Tim Means taking on Nicholas Dalby. Tim Means, who was supposed to fight last week or 2 weeks ago. I've lost track. But I think it was last week. He was supposed to take on Danny Roberts, and I was all over the under in that spot. All of those ones were voided. But that had more to do with Roberts than it did have to do with Tim Means. It's minus 135 Means, plus 115 Dalby. I mean, here's the thing. What is all that different about this fight versus the Daniel Rodriguez fight, which Dalby won? But, I mean, you look at any of the stats, and frankly, when I was watching, I just thought it was a pretty bad decision. No, it doesn't really seem all that.
Some tickets, man.
What's all that different in this this matchup? Is Dalby going to get another robbery victory? Like, I don't know. I'll go with Tim Means. I think we saw what can happen. Maybe the gas tank of of Rodriguez is a little bit better than Means. And Dalby, I've seen some stuff from him in camp. The guy looks like he's in the best shape of his life. He had, some head or mental issues for a little bit there, but it seems like that has been put to the wayside, at least for now. Means for me, but having a fight last week, having it canceled, a lot of moving parts. Definitely tune into the weigh-ins and maybe you see something there. But Means is the pick for right now. What about you?
Yeah, so I agree. It's tough to gauge Dalby at times because you can go back to his initial run in the UFC and even his subsequent loss in Cage Warriors right afterwards against Carjo Pedersoli, and it's like, man, this guy's terrible. But then it comes out, I believe you said mental health issues, and that could be it. But what I was told was like severe alcoholism. Like very tough to get through fight camps. I bet you it's all correlated, I'm sure. But it's like, how do you get through fight camps and then going out there and fighting guys in a cage in front of spectators with all that pressure, with all that going on in your life? So is that a good representation of Dalby? Like, nah, probably not. The version that you see after that, he's been on a hell of a run, really. I mean, he went on to win back the Cage Warriors title and have a pretty successful career there. Comes back into the UFC. And again, he's actually been the benefit of like a few good bounces. Like the Jesse Ronson fight, it did not look good. He got dropped and then rear naked choke, but it turns out that Ronson was on the sauce, so it's a no contest. The Alex Oliveira fight, it's 1-1 going into the third, and he's losing the third. He's going to lose the third, and the ref stands them up. And then Dalby wins the last like couple minutes. It like totally gets bailed out by the ref stand up. So again, he gets the victory there. The Daniel Rodriguez fight, he loses, but the judges give it to him. So it's like, it's so hard to get a range. The one thing you can give this guy, no matter what, is that he's got heart for days. Like, you really got to put him away. Even that Darren Till fight, remember that was his claim to fame? He gets dropped in the first. He gets, he's clearly down 2 rounds. And then the third round, Darren Till breaks his collarbone. And Dalby just swarms him on top. It's just like, oh man, lucky breaks. He's had a lot of these like lucky bounces in the UFC, so to speak. So I don't know how much I give it to this guy's got a strong game plan, strong skill set, or how much is just like, yeah, he's been the beneficiary of some good bounces. Tim Means, meanwhile, he's a much better fighter. He's got the better striking. He's his wrestling, people sleep on it, but it's actually really not that bad. I think he's going to give him a lot of trouble, but when I come down to toughness, when I come down to that grit, which is that one thing that I am giving Dalby, that sometimes is enough to get through Tim Means, is that you got to take his best shots because, this guy's got some good shots and he's going to hit you with them. But if you're able to break on through to the other side and grind on him and make this an ugly bog of a fight, especially up against the cage, if you can score takedowns, great. But beyond that, just back this guy up, then you can make it happen. Now with Tim Means, he's looked really good his last 2. But keep in mind, maybe we can make excuses. That Mike Perry fight represented a fight where Mike Perry should have been able to move forward and do a lot of the things that Dalby theoretically is going to have to do here. And yet you see him go out there and gets taken down in the first, but as soon as he gets back up, it's all Means the rest of the fight. But it's important to note that Mike Perry is A, Mike Perry, and B, he missed weight by like 9 pounds going into that fight. So it was a version of Mike Perry that had 3 minutes of cardio and actually looked good for the first 3 minutes. And then once he gassed, you had Tim Means kick his ass. That's expected. Now you got Leonardo Staropoli. Leonardo Staropoli's had virtually no success in the UFC. Yeah, sure. He opened up with a couple of low-level wins, beat Thiago Alves, a shell of a shell. But like since then, just really hasn't gone this guy's way. And in that fight, Means is getting backed up a lot, doesn't want to strike with him. So he relies on his offensive wrestling of all things to grind this fight to the ground. So again, like to me, it's not ultra impressive. He's 37 years old, which I get. Dalby's 36, 37 in a few months. But the wear and tear, the wear and tear from the drinking is on Dalby. The wear and tear from the fights is on Tim Means. This guy's fought a lot of people. He's fought in pretty much the who's. He's knocked guys down. He's been knocked out. He's had injuries. He's getting a little bit older. And even though he's looked good in those last 2 fights, you can't discredit the Nico Price fight or the Daniel Rodriguez fight or the Alex Oliveira fight or the Sergio Moraes fight. He totally got robbed. The Bilal Muhammad fight's a great example. He kicks these guys' asses in the first round all the time. It's whether you're able to keep with it and break him down. So again, I hate to say 3 straight fights where this is keep your eye on it from a live betting opportunity. That means maybe knocks Dalby out early. But if he doesn't, I would expect Dalby to kind of work his way back into this. And again, you see that in the Oliveira fight. He had to rely on the referee to stand him. But as soon as he stands him, is he short for gas? No. You mentioned the pictures in training camp because I picked up on that as well. He looks absolutely deezed up. He's shredded. And this figures to be his last serious run. Again, he's almost 37 years old. As far as a live underdog, as far as somebody that could spring the upset, Means has lost as a favorite before. He does kind of get broke in these situations. And again, the one advantage I'm giving Dalby might be enough to squeak this one out. So
the cardio.
I'm going to keep my eye. Yeah, I'm going to keep my eye on him from a live betting perspective. I'm going to officially go for the PRP's sake, Dalby. Because again, what am I going to do? Pick all these favorites? Like, I'm recognizing this is a dog with a chance. I might as well pull the trigger on it in that regard. And yeah, and hope he comes through. You mentioned that Tim Means was supposed to fight last week. Well, Dalby was actually supposed to fight the Candyman on this card.
Yep.
So it's not like he's short notice. He had a fight on this card, whereas Means has had a state of limbo for the last week, not knowing if he's going to fight or not. Hanging out in Las Vegas, hanging out in the hotel. Don't go anywhere because you're part of a bubble. Your body physically peaks, right? You're getting ready to make weight. Now they're like, make weight a little bit later. It's like,
well, at least he found out.
He's 37.
Did we do the show by the time?
No, I don't think we broke the fight down.
No,
but still, you know
it was
what I mean.
canceled like
It's
Tuesday night last week, I believe. Yeah. Either way, I don't know how that plays out in terms of like your time at the Apex and like what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. But it can't.
I'll give you a last funny stat that might not mean anything at all. But
right.
Dalby, I noticed that he seriously struggles with the straight left down the middle, right? And so I looked at it, right? And these are his losses. Jesse Ronson, southpaw. Peter Sabata, southpaw. Zach Cummings, southpaw. And Darren Till is a southpaw. And Tim Means is a switch stance guy, but he's actually a listed orthodox fighter. So if Tim Means comes down the southpaw stance and floors him with a left hand, then yeah, it is what it is. But if he can force Tim Means to fight, when you fight as a southpaw and you're not a natural southpaw, you leave yourself more defensively open, right? Like that's not your preferred stance. You're not quite as defensively sound in that stance. So if he can force him out of that stance, makes it happen. But sorry, this is the last thing too. He's never been knocked out in his entire career, but he got dropped by Darren Till. He got dropped by Zach Cummings. He got dropped by Peter Sabata, and he got dropped by Jesse Ronson. So never actually been knocked out, but he has been knocked down 4 times. So Means could be the first guy to do it, but Means better hope he puts him away, bud, because if he drops him and this guy comes back to life, you're going to have a problem. He's going to keep chugging on. He's going to grind on you. And so that's why it'll be fun from a live betting perspective as well. All
right. Well, you're talking about dog with a shot. I think there could be an argument to be made in this next one. Renato Moicano takes on Jai Herbert or Herbert.
Jay Herbert.
Herbert.
He's English.
I guess he's English, so he's Herbert.
Yeah, it's got to be Herbert.
Jai Herbert. Obviously, things were going pretty well for him, at least at the end of round 1 and into all of round 2. I ended up cashing a plus 800 dog ticket on Massaranduba after round 2. Like the commentary was going like absolutely nuts. Like, oh my God, Francisco Trinaldo is so gassed. Oh my God, he's so done. It's just like, and the odds reflected that. He didn't look great. It wasn't a good situation to be in. But I'm like, I've heard this story over and over and over. Everyone always thinks that Trinaldo's super tired, and it's just like he's got another gear. He's able, like the guy's got super amount of experience. He's able to survive. I mean, did I expect the clubbing left? No, but I gave him round 1, and I thought I don't think he's completely out of the woodwork. He could get this done. But so we got Renato Moicano as a minus 235 favorite. Herbert as a plus 200 underdog. Herbert's got like freakishly long arms, like 77 inches here. Moicano has fancied himself a striker. Even that Valiev fight. I mean, he shoots in for a couple takedowns, but like you are standing across the octagon from a guy you should not be engaging in the striking game with whatsoever. Did Moicano look okay in a couple spots there? Yes, but you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. He ends up getting absolutely mollywop knocked out. So that kind of threw out the whole idea of like, oh, well, this guy, he's chinny at 145, moves up to 155, catches a W, but then he gets iced in the first round against Valiev last time out. Watching Herbert against Trinaldo historically great chin. I wouldn't be shocked to see Herbert catch a knockout in this spot. That reach advantage is huge. You're basically, if you're gonna bet Moicano, you really want him coming out, sticking to the wrestling, and getting this fight to the ground immediately, where he should have a pretty good advantage. But even when Trinaldo took Herbert down, It didn't look like Herbert was a complete fish out of water. I'm on my first bet of the entire card. I took some of the under 2.5 minus 135 to win 1 unit. I don't have very much on this card, but I feel like either Moicano's going to be able to get to this fight to the mat, is going to be able to fish for a submission. He's still good there. He's got a lot of talents, but that chin is such a question for me. Or Herbert's gonna shut this guy's lights out. What's your take here?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I would consider this, again, every underdog's got a chance, but I would classify this one more as a puncher's chance. Like, Jay Herbert could win this fight if he lands that shot. But as far as him going out there and having the superior skill set or potentially working him over the course of a few rounds, like, I don't know. I think he's a little bit too green for my liking. So I guess we'll start off with Jay Herbert. Too green for my liking is not a problem when you're developing, and he appears to be developing, but he's 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to start with his quick little story here. He turns pro in 2015. He's already 26 years old, right? He had no base prior to coming in. It wasn't like he wrestled. It wasn't like he was a jiu-jitsu guy, but he's got those freakishly long arms and he's got a lot of power. And so that's where puncher's chance factors in. He's got 10 pro wins, 8 of which are by knockout. 1 submission win, 1 decision win, but the 8 knockouts and 10 wins, certainly, if you have a path to victory, it's the knockout. And Moicano, how does Moicano lose fights? It's by the knockout.
Always.
At least that right there, we've got a puncher's chance scenario for sure, right? But when I look at the body of work, he's fighting guys in England, lower level guys. He fights Reese McKee. Reese McKee's had absolutely no success in the UFC. He gets knocked out by Reese McKee in a minute and a half. He goes back to fighting good but not great Cage Warriors guys that don't make it to the UFC. Kane Carrizosa actually did make it to the UFC, didn't do well. Outside of that, it's just it's lower level British regional scene guys. So now he debuts in the UFC as the Cage Warriors champion. But keep in mind, he's coming off like a 10-month long layoff prior to that Trinaldo fight. And coming into this fight, he's coming off an 11-month long layoff. And I think the layoff affects him a little bit. But in the Trinaldo fight, it's like, it's a tough spot. You're taking on a very experienced veteran in your UFC debut. He actually comes in as the betting favorite over Trinaldo and gives a good account of himself using that jab. But you're not getting a prime version of Trinaldo. You're getting a guy that already built that name. He already built that reputation. And he's kind of at the tail end. That you can capitalize on. It was 1-1 going into the third, and then he ends up getting, man, what a shot. What a terrible stoppage by Herb Dean, by the way. Then not quite as bad as maybe Dan Hardy makes it out to be on the broadcast. But a weird stoppage where he gets cold cocked on the forehead and his body just freezes up and he hits the ground. Now, that's kind of only the one time he really got caught clean by Trinaldo in the fight, and he flops over. The Riz McKee fight, he gets hit, he flops over. He might potentially have a chin issue of his own. Outside of that, all of his wins are lower level guys. So even though he's knocking them out, I just don't have enough faith here. And again, now that he's 33 years old, it's not going to, I don't think it's getting any better. It's probably, this is who he is. This is at best, if not slight margin of improvement. Moicano, meanwhile, if I was just to be like, what's the first thing that pops to your head when you think of Rafael Fiziev? You'd be like, oh shit, heavy, stocky power puncher, man. The guy's got big power. He's probably, I would say, one of the top 5 strikers in the division. Oh shit. If I was to ask you about Chang Sung Jung, what would you think? Oh shit, dude. I mean, this guy's a badass. He's fought for the title. He's, I would say, top 5 strikers in the UFC's division. Okay, all right, fair. What about Jose Aldo? Geez, he's the former champion, and certainly you would consider him, probably one of the top 5 strikers of the division. What about Brian Ortega? And now, mind you, this is not an Ortega currently, right? Moicano is actually winning the first 2 rounds before getting caught. But you get what I'm saying here. Those are his losses. Jay Herbert has not faced anything like this. He's not faced anything near this. He got a little taste of the good life in that first fight. Gave an okay count of himself against a 41-year-old Trinaldo, but ultimately didn't get the job done and get knocked out. I think against Moicano, he's running into way too many problems. And not least, Moicano actually doesn't want to strike, right? And, yeah, he's chinny, but he wants to get these fights to the ground. And you notice in the Fiziev fight, the only reason he strikes is because, Fiziev's been working on his takedown defense. He's got rock solid hips, and he just stuffs everything with ease. Now he's forced to strike, and his striking looks good. He actually, he doesn't wobble, but he stuns Fiziev with a decent right hand, lands a couple good shots. Those same punches on Herbert probably topple him over, but Fiziev takes them, mind you. And he gets caught and he gets knocked out. But the one fight prior to that against Damir Hadzovic represents all the same problems that Jay Herbert does. He's a power puncher. And his path to victory over Moicano would be to land that shot. He's got no interest in striking with him. He just takes him down right off the bat, takes his back and submits him. It didn't work against Fiziev. It doesn't work against Korean Zombie. It doesn't work against Jose Aldo. But against lesser guys, he's getting you down. That Jeremy Stevens fight, the fight with Calvin Kattar, where it's a full display of his striking arsenal. I get those fights are at 45, but there's still better guys than he's fighting here in a 55 fight with Jay Herbert. So outside of a puncher's chance landed, and we've seen with Moicano, he has been knocked out before, sure. Outside of that, Moicano should roll him up. And normally I would have him as a top ticket play, but because he has that history, it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of volatility there for my liking. But still, I got faith in him that he's just going to go back to the game plan that's necessary. Take this guy to the ground. He's at American top team as well. Like the game plan will be.
He's always been an American top team. That's not going to fix his chin.
It's not right, fair. But what I'm saying is the guys he's losing to are all elite competitors out of elite gyms. Valiev is one of the top guys out of Tiger Muay Thai. They catered him. They got Volkanovski down there. They got Peter Yan down there. Chang Sung Jung, Jose Aldo. This is a case where he's fighting a guy at a London Shoot Fighters in England. Like, has he faced, these smothering grapplers? Has he faced a guy like this, even just in sparring? No. Has Moicano seen 100 Jay Herberts over the last number of years? Like, yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
So everything else, like skill-wise, everything's going in his way. Experience-wise, everything goes in his way. It's puncher's chance. So if I had Jay Herbert, I would take Jay Herbert by knockout. But what you're saying with the under 2.5, brother, that makes a ton of sense as well.
Yeah.
So I like that.
I mean, most books now are like going to the 1.5, and I'm not so sure about the 1.5. Like, I think 2.5 is the money spot. It's going to get a little bit juice. It's probably like minus 150 in most spots if you can find it right now. 1.5 is dicey. Like it's kind of always the case. They've done a much better job. I've been crushing a bunch of these props recently, but I feel like this week they did quite a better job at staying away from like some of these like plus money 2.5 odds. So they're adapting, so do we have to adapt as well. All right, we got Kennedy and Nzechukwu taking on Danilo Marques, minus 125 Nzechukwu, plus 105 Marques. Nzechukwu, I think, was like plus 100 underdog. It was like minus 120 Marques when this fight opened, so it's flipped. But obviously they're expecting it to be a pretty close fight. I don't know. Watching Kennedy, watching some of his fights, like the guy's obviously super, super green. He's only 8-1 in his career. I mean, he's losing most of that Alberg fight. Pretty much the majority of it. The one real saving grace that he's got in that is that, man, can this guy take a punch. He was eating all of Alberg's best shots. And Alberg basically, it was basically like Homer Simpson's boxing career, where it's just like Homer would like let them just absolutely pound on him and then just nudge people over. That's essentially what Kennedy and Nzechukwu did to Carlos Alberg. And then I went back and I watched the Stosic fight, and he gets taken down 4 times. In fairness to him, he's able to get up pretty quick against Stosic, but like Stosic isn't some sort of like amazing wrestler. I realize that he's like 26 years old. He's developing. He's making steps in the right direction. So we'll see if the hole in his wrestling game is still there. Watching Marques versus Mike Rodriguez, slow Mike last time out, I see a lot of the same tendencies. I mean, the leg is right there for the single leg takedown, and that's what Marques goes after. And Nzechukwu is not going to just lie flat on his back like slow Mike Rodriguez does in his fights. But I don't know, I kind of disagree with the line movement here. I'm considering, because I like what I see from Nzechukwu's get-up game, I'm considering, because Marques by submission is like plus 220 or something like that. I'm considering Marques by decision plus 400. I just think that he's going to be able to fish. Like Kennedy keeps that lead leg right out there, and that's going to, it's going to go right into Marquez's hands in terms of being able to scoop that leg up. In the Stosic fight, another thing that I noticed too is that Stosic eats that lead leg when Kennedy is standing southpaw, and then in the second half of that fight, he switches. So he's obviously like switch stance. He's not necessarily going to come out as a southpaw, but I feel like that leg is just there for the taking on single leg takedowns, and we'll see if Marques is able to hold him down. Usually Kennedy's got a pretty good size advantage over guys too, and Marques is surprisingly quite large man. So at 205, It's dogger pass for me here. What about you?
Yeah, it's all about reading into the improvements that Kenny Nzechukwu may have or may not have made. And that, again, it's all just speculative. I know me. I bet Kenny Nzechukwu in this spot, and he'll be one of the apple pie shares. Daniil Marques, who I've had very bad reads on, just finds a way to just listen. Is it pretty? No. But is it effective? Yes. He just gets on you. He smothers you up against the cage. He fishes for that single leg takedown. He might fish 3 or 4, maybe 5 times. But eventually he seems to get it. And when he is on top, it just smothers you. They got nowhere to go. Mike Rodriguez is able to get back up to his feet a few times, but this guy gives him no space. And one thing you notice in the Rodriguez fight, Rodriguez is a tall, lanky, 6'4", 82-inch reach. And Nzechukwu's 6'5", 83-inch reach. So not a similar build. Like Nzechukwu seems a lot thicker set, but similar in nature. And my God, Marques has no problem just walking this guy right into the pocket, right up against the cage, right to where he wants it. Is it pretty? No. But is it effective? Yes. So on that sense, I could see somebody wanting to take a dog shot on Daniil Marques. And I don't think you go for the submission play. I think you go for the decision side of things, because that's all he's looking to do. He's really looking to slow this thing down to a bog. But I'm almost more of the mindset of Kenji Koo is making those improvements, should be able to go out there and keep the fight standing, man. If he gets taken down, get back up. But beyond that, use your newfound takedown defense, your improved takedown defense, and keep the fight standing. Again, he's another guy that's just so young in his career, man. He turns pro in 2016, 2016. And by 2018, this is effectively, it's a little less than 2 years to the day. Okay. It's like 18 months. He's on the Contender Series. That's a quick turnaround. He wins in the Contender Series. Sorry, the first time. They bring him back a second time, like a year later. He wins again. Now he's in the UFC. Sorry, to be exact, the first time he was on the Contender Series, he was less than 1 year into his pro career when he won a split decision over Anton Berzin. So you watch that fight, and there's a lot of glaring holes in Nzechukwu's game where it's like, oh man, my God, what's this guy doing? Okay, mind you, the next time you see him, a year later in the Contender Series, still less than 2 years into his pro career, lots of improvements. So you talk about the UFC run, the Paul Craig fight, and we know that Paul Craig is legitimate. And we know that Paul Craig's submission game is top notch. And going out there and, we should have known by the Ankalaev fight, but we know now because of the Jamal Hill fight. Nzechukwu's up 2 rounds. He's fighting a good game plan, but he's so green. He's so young in his career. He hasn't experienced these hard fought 3 rounds that he does definitely gas out and gets caught in the Paul Craig special. No big deal. Young budding fighter. Now that you get the Darko Stosic fight, you mentioned the 4 takedowns for Stosic, Paul. However, you forgot to mention the fact that equals as many ball shots as Nzechukwu took in that fight. With Stosic, she lost 2 points. Yeah. It was like, my God, man, what are you doing? And every time Nzechukwu would rise back up, clearly in pain, and would fight on, would get taken down, would get right back up. Stosic currently fights in Poland at 240 pounds. He's a big boy. Even from that fight, which is 205, you see the size of his legs? Oh, he's a big boy. That's a tough fight, And when he gets taken down, he gets back up, and then he outworks him, and he's got the volume. Now, Carlos Olberg picked that fight.
Well, he didn't really outwork him. The only reason he won that fight was the points. He lost 2 points.
But what were the rounds otherwise
29-26. So that was supposed to be a 29-28. And then there was 2 28-27s. Which would have been 29-28. Stosic that was the funny thing about it, is that Stosic at the end of the fight is like complaining, which is like, dude, you just pissed away 2 points on every single judge's scorecard because of the nut shots, man. Like,
yeah, that's fair. And you know what? How much does that factor in? I don't know. Like, how much do the nut shots factor in the game plan? But you're right. Not a good performance for him. This is the key here to me, because this is a young, budding fighter who needs the experience. Lucky to get the win, sure, but he had to fight 3 hard rounds. He had to get up every time he got taken down. He had to overcome a little bit of adversity. That's fair. And now he disappears, right? He just vanishes. And Israel Adesanya is the champ. Brad Riddell's in the UFC's kicking some ass. There's a city kickboxing takeover. Carlos Olberg's a male model. He's good looking. He's undefeated. He's buddies with all the gang. They're raving about his skills. He's chief sparring partner for Izzy Adesanya leading up to his fight, these UFC title fights. And they say, hey, we want this guy in Contender Series. We want this guy in the UFC. They get him the shot in the UFC. Not Dana, but matchmaking tells City Kickboxing, you tell us who you want to fight. Here's a list of guys. bunch of guys. You tell us who you want to fight. They specifically pick Nzechukwu, which makes sense because Nzechukwu hasn't particularly looked good at, like you're saying, right? He hasn't looked good. He looked terrible in the Darko fight, and his cardio was off in the Paul Craig fight. But the key is that they didn't fight him right after he just lost those fights. Carlos Ulberg fight takes place almost 2 years since. And so in that fight, is Ulberg teeing off on him early? Yeah, but I don't think it's as easy as you're saying it was. Ulberg kicks his ass for the first 3 minutes, but when Kennedy would counter and would get one singular strike in at a time, you could see it was taking an effect on Ulberg, whereas Kennedy, seemingly hurt, was taking everything. He's got good durability. He's got a good chin. Again, of this size and this reach, he's going to be a problem for guys once he figures it out. Fortis MMA has really been drilling him, really trying to get him better. And again, with Deal Marquez, it comes down to that takedown. If he gets the takedown and Kennedy can't work his way back up, this is all she wrote. You should know by the first round. But Carlos Ulberg doesn't have a plan B. There effectively is no plan B. He cannot strike. He might be the worst striker in the division. And so his one and done striking is only going to take him so far. It really comes down to the takedown. If he gets it, I agree with your assessment 100%. If he doesn't get it, Kennedy is going to maul this guy up and could potentially knock him out. Looking at the line, it's pretty close. I don't have to if I take a Kennedy at minus 125, it's not like, oh man, I got a favorite shit in the pie for me. It was like, I knew I was getting myself into. It's minus 125. It's pretty much near even money. That's as much as I could pretty much stomach Nzechukwu, but I'm playing into the narrative that I think he made the improvements. Whereas Daniil Marquez is...
You've hated this guy every step of the way.
I
don't know, man.
know.
I don't think he's as bad.
You're totally right about
I think
that.
people shit on him a lot more. I don't think he's as bad. His single leg takedown seems to be pretty solid. He's able to scoop that leg up pretty fast. We'll see. We'll see if Kennedy can stop it. I'm going to be looking for that. I'm going to be looking at all my books once I get a chance, using a different computer here that doesn't have all of my accounts locked in. But if I can get like over 400 on the Marquez by decision, I think Nzechukwu is going to be able to get up. Like Slow Mike was able to get up, but just keep persistently going for those takedowns. It's probably, I don't have too many shots on this card, so that's maybe a bit of a YOLO play. Next up on the card, we've got a very, very interesting matchup. Shavkat Rakhmonov takes on Michel Prazeres. Rakhmonov is a minus 300 favorite. Prazeres can be had for plus 240. Very, very interesting intangibles in this fight, I guess you could say. I mean, there's a 10-inch reach advantage for Rakhmonov, who is, combat sambo specialist. I mean, Rakhmonov in his fight against Cowboy Oliveira first time out, he's getting held up against the cage pretty much the majority of round one, and then you can see this guy's finishing ability. When Cowboy Oliveira is not able to take this guy down, eventually he just like fishes for a guillotine, and that's all she wrote. I could see a path where old, juiced up, on his Brazilian mountain yams, Prazeres, who's coming off of a 2-year USADA ban. Maybe he's able to like make this really ugly, hold this kid who's very skinny and long for the division up against the cage, but without having those mountain yams in play, it's hard for me to back this guy. Obviously, he's like, 38, 39 years old, tail end of his career. Most of his best fights were a weight class down. He's 5'6". Like, these guys don't really necessarily look like they're in the same division whatsoever. Got to see what Prazeres is up to anyway. But Rakhmonov, I didn't think that his debut was all that impressive, but I think it's onwards and upwards. I saw that he's working with Henry Hooft a little bit this past week, getting ready for this fight. Keep it on the feet, keep it at range. You have a 10-inch reach advantage. You should be able to get the job done. What's your take here?
Yeah. I'm going to agree. Prazeres at his best, if you thought you were getting a decent version of himself, is an absolute stylistical nightmare for this guy. But yeah, he's 39. He's coming off a 2-year-long USADA ban. He hasn't fought in 2.5 years. The last time he did fight against Ismail Nordiev, he did not look good. Yeah, and if you wanted to put one little bit of icing on top of the cake there, the guy does his best work like when he's missing weight at 155 pounds. Like when he was a lightweight, or when he was like the Des Green fight, he comes in at 161 for the 155-pound fight. He's so big. He's so strong. He powers you to the ground. At 170, they were really taking away his best weapon, which was that size and that strength. I mean, he just can't make the weight anymore. And even though he's had some success, it's a split decision whenever Zach Cummings, he didn't look good in. The Bartos-Fabinski fight, it ended before it got going. And again, it's Fabinski. And the Ishmael Nordiev fight, he looked awful. Now he takes the ban. Now he takes the suspension. Now he's off on the sidelines. To think that he's going to come back as like an improved version of himself, I just don't think so. Again, I could see a young prospect getting 2 years off and making a ton of improvements. I could see somebody in their early 30s taking a few years off and making a ton of improvements. The only improvement he may have theoretically made is if his body was just, had a lot of injuries and a lot of wear and tear, and he was able to, heal it over or just from being on the sidelines. But I don't know. And I agree, dude. He's got a lot of experience in the UFC. He's fought a lot of better guys in the UFC. And again, it all goes down to that takedown. So he's fought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. He's had 13 fights in the UFC, and he's taken down all 13 opponents. So that in itself is a pretty wild accomplishment. And that in itself would suggest that Rakhmonov is probably going to taste the canvas at least once.
But will he though? And like that
that
Nordiev fight, man, like it did not like that. His wrestling looked actually pretty bad in most spots during that fight. Sure he took him down, but now he's taking on a combat sambo specialist, 39 years old. Like, I've made a lot of money on Prazeres, like missing weight and then hitting it after people like bet the side. And it's just like, no, you want to bet Prazeres when he misses weight, and he's got this big advantage. He's just able to be like a 5'6" meatball on top of you. Yeah, it's an interesting spot. Sorry, what were you? I cut you off.
No, dude, totally fine. Is that so? The last time you seen him against Nordiev, his wrestling, although he gets 3 takedowns, he's unable to hold him down. And keep in mind, he's a minus 450 favorite over Ishmael Nordiev, who's making his UFC debut. Went on to have no success in the UFC and get released. Went on to lose on the regional scene prior to his UFC career finishing, Brave CF. So he's a 450 favorite, and he can't take him down, and so he's forced to stand with him. When he stands with him, he loses. And so with Rakhmonov, dude, 6'1" with a 77-inch reach at 170 pounds, it's just like unheard of. And so if you don't take him down and you're forced to stand with him, he's going to chew you up. Is he green in himself? Yes. Do I love these guys that are undefeated? No. I would rather them lose, figure out what their weakness is, and see if they go back to the drawing board and can figure it out. But you're right. With Cowboy Cerrone or Cowboy Oliveira, he has success pressing him up against the cage using that game plan. Prazeres is almost certainly going to do the same thing, but I don't think that Prazeres is going to be able to do it for 15 minutes, and I don't think he's going to be doing it as effectively. And similar to Oliveira, who I think took the fight on short notice, or maybe he missed weight. I remember he looked awful at weigh-ins, is that you knew he's probably got a bad gas tank. He's got 5 minutes to work with. And when he failed to do anything in the first 3, Rakhmonov took over. I get the sense that's how this one goes. I think he probably does press him up against the cage for the first 3-4 minutes. And then once the takedown fails to come to fruition, then he's going to be forced to stand with him. He's going to get chewed up at range. So yeah, I would have to go again with another favorite, Shavkat Rakhmonov, who I was high coming into the UFC. Cashed that ticket at good odds, in my opinion, over Cowboy Oliveira. And now he's had enough time off. I would like to see a continuation of that, of the ball rolling, whereas Prazeres, in my mind, almost certainly would have to be a regressed version than the last one we saw, which was a regressed version of the ones we had seen in years prior. So the only other thing I could say is, again, in those like 13 UFC fights, he's scored 10, 13, 16, 17, 24, 32, 34, 38, 41, 44, 45. He's scored 48 takedowns in his UFC career.
And he's a second degree black.
I suppose yeah, exactly.
Second degree black belt as well. So I don't know if the next just good, even if the next there, maybe he feeds him the next so that he can end up on top and get out. Like, I don't think it's easy when. But that's all being said, we're going to see at the weigh-ins. I'm fully kind of expecting this guy to look significantly deflated compared to what we used to seeing Michel Prazeres at. He's off those Brazilian mountain yams, buddy. Sounds like we're on the same page, though. It's like, how can you bet Prazeres? Like, coming off this age, coming off of a USADA ban, he'd have to hold it up against the cage a shit ton. And who know? Like, is a referee even going to allow that to happen? Probably not, unless you're advancing, unless you're moving. I don't know.
Small cage in the Apex, though.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad you
Maybe
don't
we
know,
won't put
like,
Rakhmonov at the top.
I think he's got a lot of upside, but I think he's got some work to do in between. I want to see those hands improve, because if he can just stay at range, like 10-inch reach advantage, and stay out of like some looping shots from Prazeres, like it should be pretty easy to just pick this guy apart. But I don't know if his stand-up game is quite there yet. Anyway, let's move on. We got Warley Alves taking on Jeremiah Wells. Warley Alves is a -230 favorite. Jeremiah Wells can be had for +200. Wells coming in on short notice in this spot. I mean, I wrote it on Twitter earlier. Like Warley Alves, if fights were only 1 5-minute round, title contender. This guy can give you the goods for about 4 minutes. Even in some of his more successful fights. Yeah, like against Randy Brown, I believe. Yeah, in the Randy Brown fight, was watching that one. It's just like he is giving Randy Brown the goods for the first 4 minutes. Randy Brown, and then he kind of gasses him. Randy Brown's able to take over in like the last 30 seconds of round 1, and then he's able to submit him in round 2. So the over under in this fight is at -140 +100. Again, these 1.5 rounds, unless you got like a Terrence McKinney type of situation where the guy's just like all gas, no brakes, it's hard to really feel great about it. Watching some of Wells's fights as well, if this fight isn't finished in the first round, from what I've seen from Wells, is like that's how you beat Wells. Like if you can extend this guy out of round 1 and into round 2, he slows down significantly. I like Warley. Obviously, Wells coming in on short notice. I like Warley, but 230 for a guy that I have no faith can fight 15 minutes is a really tough ask. I guess if I had to bet something, it would be the under 1.5 rounds, but that could be kind of dicey because it's usually around that time where Warley's got absolutely nothing left. Not a fight that I absolutely love. But yeah, the one saving grace that I really saw is that Jeremiah Wells, when he really struggles, it seems to be that he comes out really, really hot in round 1, and then he fizzles away as well. So you have two guys that are going to probably meet in the center. It's going to be a big dust ball. And then whoever's got the most cardio is going to be able to survive. Or what? Warley just absolutely ices this guy. I don't know. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Warley Alves, listen, gun to the head prediction, Warley Alves all day long. But as far as really putting money on it, Warley Alves is one of the most untrustworthy guys on the roster. Because if he shows up, world beater. He can hang with almost anybody. If he does not show up, which seems to be about 50%, maybe a little less than 50% of the time, he looks awful, man. I used to blame it on bad weight cuts, but I don't know. Sometimes you just don't think he's in shape. Maybe he's not motivated. When he is motivated, the goods are there, man. When he's not, it's just like he can't back it. And him coming into this spot, you just don't know what he's going to look like. He won the Ultimate Fighter, Brazil. Looked good, highly touted prospect. But the run was impressive, dude. Wendell Oliveira fought in the UFC. Ishmael De Jesus, the Shudo champion, is a large man and a legitimate talent. He fought good guys. Comes to the UFC, he beats Alan Jouban, Nordine Taleb, Colby Covington to go on a 4-0 run right off the hop. But the Brian Barberena fight, he's a -600 favorite. After the first round, his body shuts down. Just like you're saying, he's a good first round guy. And then once you extend him, he falls apart. Bad. Kamaru Usman fight, that'll happen against anybody. Don't got to talk about that one. Salim Touari, he wins, but he looks awful. Sultan Aliev, he looked great, dude. He swells his eye shut, closed it, striking looks much improved. The very next fight, he takes on James Krause, a lightweight, a guy that basically stepped up on short notice. And again, he's a -320 favorite over James Krause. And he actually didn't even look good in the first round. He got his ass kicked the entire time. Like bad. Knocked down the second round. James Krause made an absolute fool of him. It looked like he was pretty much done. Now he gets Sergio Moraes. Not only does he look pretty good in the fight, he knocks out Sergio Moraes, which at least for a while was like an impossible task. Guy had a great chin, right? It's a solid victory. And he rebounds that by gassing out after one round against Randy Brown. Like it's hit and miss, hit and miss, hit and miss. And so I load up on Munir Laziz. You remember, man, I was doing good on that card too. I just needed to bring it on home with Warley Alves.
And then one round, Warley showed up.
Well, yeah, because he's a dangerous dude when he shows up, and the body kick, I never saw it coming. Like, how do you factor that into a prediction, right? And he's all over him. The dude is a legitimate BJJ black belt. He does have a nasty submission game. He loves the guillotine. He's mostly a guillotine guy, but if he puts his arms around your neck, you're in a lot of trouble. Striking's come a long way. He's got power mostly in his right hand. Good uppercut, it seems like it's coming together for him. He's a dangerous threat for anybody. Now, in this fight, he's supposed to take on Ramazan Emeev. So Emeev is a cancer to Warley Alves' style because he's just going to lean on him against the cage. And then what do you think is going to happen to Warley after he's getting leaned on for 7.5 minutes? He's going to gas him. Mm-hmm. He could maybe jump guard to the guillotine, right? That same position yielded him the guillotine against Colby once upon a time. But Emeev's not an idiot, and he knows that that's his move. So he's not going to put his neck into harm's way. He's just going to grind on him. Now Emeev pulls out, and you get Wells. I mean, it's a completely different style matchup, one that now goes back to favoring Warley Alves. You mentioned if Warley Alves' cardio is not on point. Well, Wells is not a really good cardio guy himself.
No.
And Wells was signed to the UFC, pulled out of his debut. One would figure he's been training and he's in shape, but he's not in shape. He wasn't getting ready for 8 weeks for one specific opponent. Physically, he's in shape, but everything else that comes around it, like, I don't know. Is he capable of springing an upset on Warley? Yeah, a lot of guys are, because Warley does it to himself. But if Warley shows up here, man, he's got the advantage quite literally everywhere. Yep. And I would think if you were training Warley Alves for a fight with Ramazan Emeev, almost certainly it would be like, dude, you got to get in shape. You have to be in shape. This guy's going to grind on you. You need to have some gas in the tank to be able to separate off the cage and land the striking. And this Wells fight's the same thing. Just make sure he doesn't take you down, and he should be able to have success in the stand-up range. So I got to go with Warley Alves, but I learned my lesson on betting Warley. He's going to either show up and you'll say, I wish I had more money on him, or he's not going to show up and you'll be like, woo, dodge that one. As far as the PRP is concerned, we're going to need a Warley Alves victory. But as far as me and my bankroll are concerned, I won't fall for that Warley trap again.
Yeah, it's too painful. You know exactly that things are going to fall off of a cliff if they get extended to that cliff, All right, we got Marcin Prachnio taking on Ike Villanueva. Marcin Prachnio is a -190 favorite. Ike Villanueva is +165. If you told me a year ago that these two guys would be fighting against each other and they'd both be coming off of wins, I would have called you a liar. Like, these guys, I mean, it's insane. I mean, fair's fair to Marcin Prachnio. Performance of his life against Khalil Rountree. But Khalil Rountree had been talking about retirement just before
Worst
that.
performance of Rountree's life.
Worst performance. They served him up the softball, and he did not knock it out of the park. We will say that much. Like, Marcin had been knocked out. He keeps his head up. I mean, he keeps so many fights. He just kind of barges in there, and we saw a lot of improvements there. He didn't do a lot of the same things that had caused him so much trouble before. Like, frankly, 3 straight fight losing streak. A lot of guys get cut in that situation. Losing to Ankalaev in the mix there, it's just like, well, the vast majority of the UFC roster is going to take that L as well. Here's another fight that I just can't help myself, because just like, I know the level of competition that we're talking about in the light heavyweight division here. These are two of the bottom guys. Ike Villanueva, obviously, being able to knock out Vincius Moreira, who literally, it's like, if Vincius Moreira can't take you down to the ground, he's fucked. He's going to get knocked out. And like, that's essentially what happened in this spot. I took the under 1.5. Rare. I don't usually like taking these under 1.5. So I took under 1.5 plus 146. It's just 1 unit to win, 1.46 units if you talk in that type of language. But yeah, I guess volume, length, technical ability that I saw in the Rountree fight, I'll lean towards Prachnio, but I'm not betting him as a -200 favorite. This guy's chin has been checked far too many times. I'd rather just bet the under in this spot. What about you?
Yeah, I think you probably go for the under as well. Both guys have had their chins checked quite a few times. And yeah, I think that the way they fight, especially Marcin Prachnio is not looking to go the distance. Coincidentally, he did go the distance in his last time out in a fight that pretty much nobody saw going the distance. But that's not who he is. Like, he just runs forward, is defensive liabilities for sure, but also he puts pressure on guys. I mean, his regional show career in 1FC, anything prior to the UFC, he is a potent finisher. He's a guy that'll get in your face, make it aggressive, make it dirty if he has to, and has a considerable amount of power. It's when he got to the UFC that I was just like, my God, like his game is not where it needs to be, especially with the ring IQ. You know, you mentioned that he was getting knocked out, but the Sam Alvey fight, he runs head first, hands down, right into the counter shot. Not once, Paul. 2 times, dog. 2 times. Gets knocked out. Ankalaev's the man. He'll do it to anybody. He knocks him out. Fair play. Mike Rodriguez knocks him out like nothing. It's like, okay, this guy, he's got no chin. Khalil Roundtree should defeat him. Khalil Roundtree should be able to go out there, and he's got a Muay Thai game. He's at Tiger Muay Thai right now. He's got the big power. He's got finishing ability. He went in and knocked out one of the most legendary kickboxers of all times. Like, we know he's got the power, but here's the problem. He comes into that fight. I don't know if you remember the weigh-ins. He did make weight at 206, but my God, he looked awful. And he was been flirting with a move to heavyweight, and he was talking. Remember they had linked him to a fight with like Greg Hardy. Anyways, I think he botched a weight cut. His body probably shut down a little bit on him. And does he lose to Prachnio? Yeah. Does he get all volume and he's tired? Yeah, but it's still competitive. Like, it's still probably a 1-1 fight going into the 3rd round. And get this, right? Despite the fact that Marcin Prachnio outstruck him 102-49. Okay, keep that in mind. You've watched the fight. You know what happens, right? Drake Riggs from the Body Lock MMA, Adam Martin from BJ Penn, some dude from Fightful.com, Cage Side Press, Scotty Smith from Sherdog. They all scored the fight for Khalil Roundtree somehow. Because it's like, Marcin Prachnio is actually not very good. He's right place, right time. He springs an upset on Khalil Roundtree. We've seen that happen with Khalil Roundtree before. Michael Oleksichuk springs to mind. He was a minus 400 favorite, making his UFC debut. That did the exact same thing, threw him for the pace. So even though he snaps a losing streak, and that's positive, gets in the win column, and that's positive, for them to feed you him as a 2-1 favorite over anybody is pretty ridiculous, right? Ike Villanueva, if anything, he's a banger. And if you want to make excuses for him, his UFC debut against Chase Sherman, he looks bad, but it's at heavyweight.
Yeah, that's unfair.
And then that second fight with Jordan Wright, it was a cut stoppage before it really got going. He didn't look great, but it's a cut stoppage. And then they give him a total, he's playing T-ball. And what happens when you hit T-ball? 9 out of 10 times, unless you got no coordination, you're hitting it out of the park, and that's what he does. He gets the knockout. So you can't take a whole lot from that, but we know he's a banger, right? We know he's got the under 1.5 makes a lot of sense because Ike's got about 7.5 minutes, but that might be all it takes. He's a big enough underdog that, again, he's a puncher's chance guy, but he's a guy that feels like he's got a lot more promise to him. So I actually think Ike Villanueva is a live underdog. But remember at the top of the show, you said you made a little bit of money last week, and I said if I was disciplined, I could have made money, but I throw too many spots together. Like, this is one spot I don't need exposure to. There's nothing that I can have a beer, I can hang out, I can enjoy it. It'll be fun. But outside of that 1.5, the under, I don't need a ton on this. So for PRP purposes, I think I'm going to take Ike Villanueva. Yeah. But when you see it tweeted out, it is going to literally be on the PRP, the bottom ticket, because bro, it's a crapshoot.
I mean, Ike by knockout is plus 300.
Yeah, and you see with Prachnio that it's a path to victory.
That is the path to victory. I don't know though. It's just doesn't feel. They're not the props this week don't feel all that generous to me. Maybe some as more books open, some value will open up. But anyway, let's move on. We got Julia Avila taking on Julia Stoliarenko. She really stunk up the joint last time.
Stoliarenko.
I think I called her that coming into her UFC debut as well, and she really
I laughed then and I laugh now. It's pretty good.
She filled what? Look at the friggin' stats on. I guess she had fought on the Ultimate Fighter. She she had fought Leah Letson, but UFC debut, landed 6 significant strikes. She fancies herself a wrestler, had 0 takedowns, like 6 significant strikes in a unanimous decision loss. Like, there just wasn't all that much happening. Taking on Julia Avila, and Avila obviously is minus 360 here. Stoliarenko can be had for plus 285. We saw, I guess, the path of least resistance when she took on Sijara Eubanks last time out, got taken down controlled, grappled. I guess that's how you would, if Stoliarenko was to do it, like that's her path to victory here, but just I don't think she's very good. I don't see too many other skills around in her game. Avila was supposed to there were some offers and stuff, I believe, from some bigger camps for her to go train. She had some sort of miscommunication. I don't know. But she ended up having to leave her one camp. Maybe you can fill this in for me. And there were some big camps like ATT and some other places that were offering to have her step in, come in, and James Krause even reached out too and said yeah, come over to our gym and work with us. And from what I can see on Instagram, it seems like she's kind of at a small camp again that I can't really recognize really any of her training partners. So I don't really know. Minus 360 is quite the price to pay, and the only path to victory for Stoliarenko is a grapple fuck fest. So I don't want to get too involved in this one. What about you?
Yeah, I wish Avila would get at a big gym because she's got all the potential in the world. But at 33 years old, she needs to put the pieces together now because the division's only going to keep getting better and better, and your body's only going to keep responding, right? But she was a D1 athlete at the University of Notre Dame on the track and field team. So as far as her athletic credentials go, as far as her being a good athlete, yeah, she's on par. She's got good cardio. She's got pretty good striking. Her ground game's pretty refined. It really did look like she was going to be a massive threat to the division. You look at her regional show career, right? Just it starts off Marion Renault and Nico Montano are 2 of her first 3 wins, but then she's got a 4-year gap in between. So is she losing prime years there? Sure. I just don't think that she's been able to test herself at the highest level, get all that experience. Her UFC run, meanwhile, has been good. Penny Kanzad, Gina Mazzani, they're not real the names that you need. And when she finally gets Sijara Eubanks, little Cody bought all the hype. We got a Notre Dame track and field athlete. She's, undefeated. I guess she's had lost to Marcine Allen. It was a hand injury. She broke her own hand 49 seconds in. Whatever. She's more or less undefeated. She's a great athlete. She's got BJJ. She's got striking. She's big for this weight class. She's got good cardio. I'm all in. And I never really envisioned Eubanks just grounding her so easily and holding her down so easily. Because when Avila's on top, her top game, man, she is a threat. Relentless ground and pound, great transitions, heavy, good pressure. When she was on her back, she was a fish out of water big time. And so any type of threat of her ending up on her back, I don't love the promise of that. As far as the striking goes, yeah, that's going to be her advantage. And I would think she'd have some success here. But Stoliarenko, it's like, there's a girl that fought in Myanmar in a Lethwei fight where she smashed up the girl in the first round. Lethwei's, you can use headbutts. That's the biggest difference. It's Muay Thai with headbutts. Well, I guess it's different than Muay Thai, but the key difference is Muay Thai's got 8 weapons and Lethwei has got 9. But when you look into it further, like Stoliarenko, like you're saying, has got that stench for sure, man. I went back and I looked at that fight. So she fights in Lethwei. It's not in Myanmar. It's in Japan. Right away, it's not authentic. Second of all, she fought this girl named Wiga, just one name, kind of like the artist Seal. But this girl hadn't fought in 7 years. And the fight that she had lost 7 years ago was against Amanda Lucas, who's George Lucas's daughter, right? George Lucas from Star Wars fame, right? Amanda Lucas beat her ace 7 years ago, majority decision. I wouldn't really consider that beat her ace, but you get what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. And then 7 years later ends up in a Lethwei fight in Japan. Stenko's not really pushing herself all that much. Then she jumps into an Invicta flyweight title fight, goes 5 rounds and wins the decision. So she goes 5 rounds, but again, it's a split decision over an unheralded 5-0 opponent. There's just not enough there. She loves to just flop to her back and search that armbar. And again, you look at her record, it's all arm bars, 22 seconds, minute 1, 3:42. This one's 23 seconds, 38 seconds, a minute 26. But almost universally, it's always very, very low level. When she took on Giannis Kunitskaya, she looked completely fish out of water. And Kunitskaya could have outstruck her. Kunitskaya could have taken her to the ground, but she had so much success just pressing her up against the cage. Like Julia, because it's basically Julia versus Julia. Julia had just no answer for it here. And she just was like lost up against the cage for the most part. Landed no strikes, gave no account of herself. Did have a decent bite on one armbar attempt. And again, that is her move. But I would think that Julia has too many weapons for her. You know, if she ends up on top, she's going to be a problem. If this fight stays at range, she's going to be a problem. And I don't really see a threat of her getting gassed out and making a mistake down the stretch. The one thing would be if she ends up on her back. And I just don't think that Stoliarenko has got the kind of wrestling to use that as a primary threat. She will pull guard. She'll absolutely pull guard. But that would play into where I want the fight. I want Julia on top, right? Yeah. So if pull guard, great. That'd be great for me. It'd be like your boy Alexei Olenek pulling guard against Spivak in that second round. Dude, he was winning him until that point. So why pull guard against a guy that knows what he's doing on the ground, right? This is the same thing. Why pull guard against a girl who's got some legitimate credentials? And the weird thing is that when James Krause reached out to her, she said, at least I see it on Twitter, she was like, thank you so much. I'll call you Monday. I'll be there Monday. You know, traveling from Oklahoma to Kansas, right? Like that. I'll pack up and I'll meet you Monday. But the fact that she never did,
maybe she did, and I'm not fishing enough through her Instagram. I don't know.
I didn't honestly didn't look into it enough as it is. I just, in my opinion, she goes out there and she wins this fight. But last week I thought we were going to get some more winners than we ended up getting. It's like, well, who presents danger, right? I don't like betting on these people I don't trust. And that's what I was talking about on this card, right? We don't trust. I don't trust Tim Means. You know, I don't trust Daniel Pineda. I don't trust Timur Valiev. I don't trust Kennedy and Nzechukwu. And that's why maybe that's a fadeable spot, like you mentioned. You know, I don't fucking trust those guys. Those guys can let me down. Those guys have let me down. With Avila, it's like I was really high up on this girl and had one bad performance. If I can just chalk this up to one bad performance, no problem. But if that's an indication of, she is actually limited, you overshot your range on what you thought she could be. She's now 33 years old. She has not fought in almost a year, but not quite a year, I guess. And she pulled out of neither of which. She's never had to pull out of the fights, at least. Yeah, fair. The last thing that neither of us have mentioned is that they were booked to fight. Stoliarenko passed out on the scale. She just collapsed, right?
We've already broken down this fight.
Yes. And so I don't remember what the odds were when it got fallen apart last time, but almost certainly the 335 price tag associated with Via now is largely to do with that. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going with Julia.
All right. If you have trust issues, Cody. Next up, we've got Charles Rosa taking on Justin Jaynes. Charles Rosa, minus 175 favorite. Jaynes can be had for plus 150. You kind of thought, like, okay, Rosa, hey, you're taking on Minner, a grappler. It's just like, you're a solid grappler. You can get this done. This seems like a good stylistic matchup for you. And he got absolutely dominant. No quitting the guy, but absolutely dominated, honestly, pillar to post against Minner. And hats off to Minner. I think a lot of the problems with him that we had talked about in the past, and when you go through a bunch of his fights, is that the cardio didn't seem to be quite there. Well, working with James Krause and Glory MMA and Fitness, his game has definitely stepped up to another level. So hats off to him, props to him. No disrespect whatsoever. We have a bit of an emerging issue here, Cody. Well, maybe not an issue, maybe a good sign for your boy Charles Rosa. 2014 UFC debut, Dennis Seaver, loss. 2015, in January, win against Sean Sariano. Follows that up with a loss to Yair Rodriguez. Beats Kyle Bochniak. Loses to Shane Burgos. Manny Bermudez, he gets the win by submission, which I don't think anybody saw coming. Loses to Bryce Mitchell. Wins against Kevin Aguilar. Loses against Derek Minner. And now they've got, we got Justin Jaynes, who's 3 straight losses. Usually people don't get a 4th opportunity around here. But, Justin Jaynes, the good thing going for him is that he has been, very, very exciting as long as his fights last while he's in there. Here's a spot, though, just like, all right, we saw the grappling kind of fail for Charles Rosa last time out, but Stick to the game plan. Get the takedowns. Don't just exchange with this guy, throw bombs on the feet, and we will keep your win-loss routine that you've had your entire UFC career. We'll keep intact. So I'll pick Charles Rosa, but losing against Minner, he definitely he lost my trust.
I could not agree more, my friend. I mean, we got Charles Rosa, at one time touted to be a legitimate prospect, and just things never quite panned for him because he was never able to get 2 straight wins in the UFC. To his credit, he doesn't lose 2 straight in the UFC, but he just never really tapped into that potential. And now at age 34, coming up, he's like less than 2 months away from his 35th birthday. Yeah, he's not going to realize that potential, but he still is a threat. He's a BJJ black belt. He's defensively sound off his back, although you don't want a guy spending that much time off his back in these fights. His takedown defense really has been what's killed him. His striking is actually pretty good. He's a good striker. His initially comes from a striking base, and he's a good counter puncher. Good foot movement, good speed overall. It's just once they get a hold of him, they clamp him, they take him down. That's where he's always had his biggest troubles. When you look as far as takedown defense go, it's 40%. Gives up 4 against Derek Minner, 3 against Bryce Mitchell. Danny had taken him down, probably got caught in that triangle choke. Kyle Bochniak took him down. Yair took him down. Sean Soriano, who's a one-dimensional kickboxer, took him down 3 times. And he was also taken down by Dennis Seaver, a German kickboxer, 3 times. Takedown defense is a massive liability for this guy. And that's how you've been beating him. But as far as striking with him, again, he's going to give you a lot of problems. And as far as him getting his own jiu-jitsu game going actively, he is a submission threat. Beyond that is that his jiu-jitsu keeps him safe. And he has a very cast iron chin. He's allowed to keep himself out of harm's way for the most part. Of his losses, he went the distance with Yair Rodriguez, you know? He went the distance with Kyle Bochniak. He's close to getting there with Shane Burgos. The only time he's been knocked out. But he's arguably up 2 rounds against Shane Burgos before getting clipped in that fight. I just think that, and that fight's what, 5 years ago. It's a long enough time. Sorry, it's 4 years ago. I just don't think that Charles Rosa has durability issues. What he has is takedown defense issues, and certain guys are able to go out there and expose him. Against Justin Jaynes, it's like, what's there to expose? So Justin Jaynes has had those 4 fights in the UFC. Mind you, I've never bet on Justin Jaynes, okay? I'm very familiar with this guy's regional show career. In fact, he fought in my local province of Ontario, and I've seen him live. I'm not high on this guy. I've never been high up on this guy. Trains out of Las Vegas. And it was cool to see him get in the UFC just because he had, he's devoted his life to this sport. And every fighter's dreams to fight in the UFC. So if you got to take one on short notice, and he took the fight with Frank Camacho on like 2 or 3 days notice, was in Las Vegas, fights in Las Vegas, local guy, stay on weight in case we need somebody. Oh, we need somebody. He goes out there and just does what he's got to do, Paul. He's probably not in great shape. He doesn't got great cardio to begin with. He just bum rushes Frank Camacho. He gets a large cut opened up from a headbutt, I believe, on his own head, but he knocks out Frank Camacho. He cashes as like a 4-1 underdog. Huge moment for Justin Jaynes. Great. But his limitations as a fighter is still there, and they would become apparent. The Gavin Tucker fight, he's competitive early. He scores a knockdown early, but as soon as Gavin Tucker finds his rhythm, it's all over. And once Jaynes tires, he's a fish out of water, especially in his own grappling, right? The Gabriel Benitez fight, he never gets going. He gets knocked out. The fight with Devontae Smith, he never gets going.
He gets taken down by Devontae
absolutely gets
Smith.
thrashed on the ground by Devontae Smith. And so here's an interesting thing. In order to beat Charles Rosa, at least what we've seen, you need to take the guy down. And so Justin Jaynes has a 0% takedown accuracy. He's attempted 3 takedowns in the UFC, albeit he never got any of those 3. And he is not a wrestler. He is not. He's a come-forward brawler. And that's going to play into the hand of the speedy, mobile, range guy, better footwork, likes to counterpunch in Charles Rosa. And once this guy starts to get tired, because he will, and Charles Rosa doesn't get tired, because he won't, Charles should be able to pull away. Maybe Jaynes keeps it competitive for the first 2-3 minutes, but Charles is gonna put it on him after that. And Rosa's not a big finisher, but I could see Justin Jaynes toppling himself over. So I don't got a great read on the over/under, fight goes the distance or inside the distance quite yet. But at least for now, yeah. Charles is untrustworthy. You mentioned this. Talk about another one with trust issues. You're right. This is a card that's got a bunch of them.
In fairness,
I got to make the play on a few of them, and I think that styles make fights. I've always said that. And this is a style clash that would favor him for a change.
In fairness, he's very trustworthy coming off of a loss. I'll leave you with that. All right, finally we got Damir Hadzovic taking on Yancy Medeiros, minus 140. Hadzovic plus 120 Medeiros. The one thing about Medeiros that we used to always kind of, lean on for him is that the durability was just always in check. And I think he's been compromised a little bit. He's been in so many wars, so how can you hate on the guy? But, Donald Cerrone knocked him out at the end of round 1. Gregor Gillespie, he took him down and pounded him out. I think that and obviously way back when he got knocked out by Dustin Poirier, but geez, that's a tough scene.
All good, bud. All good.
He's been in so many wars. I don't have a great feel for this fight in general. Do you have like a strong lean in between these two guys? I haven't really had a chance to really dig into this one.
Yeah, I would go with the underdog Yancy Medeiros. So again, this is a card. Underdogs are going to come through. I'm not publicly backing a ton of them. Yancy's one that I would say at his plus 122 dog money, whatever it may be sitting at right now. He's got a shot. So when you think about Damir Hadzovic, he's got that big power. And if Yancy is chinny, then that big power probably does factor in and put him over. I don't think they're allowed to call him they do still call him the Bosnian Bomber. I didn't think that'd be like a no-fly zone in the UFC, but apparently that's still his nickname. So yeah, they call him that for a reason, and it's not because he's bombed anything. But when he fights in the UFC, it's like he's a problem for people, man. He touches you, he's going to put you away. Is he one-dimensional? Yes, especially for my liking. Takedown defense, just okay. Not even just okay. It's awful. Christos Giagos took him down 6 times. Alan Patrick took him down 9 times. Marcin Held took him down 4 times. Overall, in his UFC run, he has a takedown defense number of 39%. But if you stand in front of him, yeah, surely he can be a serious problem for you. And Yancy probably figures to stand in front of him. But again, look at his numbers.
Yancy's younger than him?
I know, right? Pretty crazy.
That is insane.
It's just it goes back to fight mileage, right? You've got Yancy, who's fought all the best guys. He doesn't even have a ton more pro fights, but he's fought Lando Venata, he's fought Gregor Gillespie, Donald Cerrone, Cowboy Cerrone. He fought Cowboy Cerrone and Cowboy Oliveira. Eric Silva was supposed to be the shit once upon a time. Francisco Trinaldo, Dustin Poirier, John McDessie still hacking it in the UFC. Jim Miller still hacking it in the UFC. Rustam Khabilov, I don't know where he's at, but that guy was a problem for almost anybody. Yves Edwards was the uncrowned lightweight champ of the world one time. He's got all the experience in the world. He's been there. He's done that. Whereas Hadzovic, it's like, yeah, he beats lesser opponents. Marcin Held's up 2 rounds before walking himself into face first. He tries the Imanari roll in the 3rd round. He's winning the fight 2-0. Imanari rolls himself into a face first knee. Okay, fair. The Nick Hein fight, he wins a split decision, and then Nick Hein publicly announces his retirement right there in the ring, being like, I don't got it anymore. Right? Mm-hmm. Split decision. Paulo Reyes. Come on, Paul. You knocked down Paulo Reyes. Okay, fair. That tends to happen. And then Giagos and Moicano just ragdoll. Like Giagos at will. And then Moicano only needed 44 seconds. He just needed the one takedown. He takes him down and submits him. So that's all a problem to me. He's been off for 15 months. That's a problem to me. You mentioned 34 years old. That's really not so bad, but he's got some glaring red flags, okay? But then I go back to his numbers. So even though he's losing, sure, but he landed 1 strike against Moicano, but it only lasted 44 seconds. He lands 24 against Giagos, but he got taken down 6 times. The Paulo Reyes fight's a knockout, so his numbers look good because he beats the guy up. But besides that, the highest he's ever scored is 71. And that's that fight with Nick Hein, in a fight where Nick Hein didn't look good. And Nick Hein never took him down. It was 71. That's his career total. Whereas Yancy Medeiros, he landed 75 against Cowboy Oliveira. He landed 80 against John McDessie. He landed, I think he had one good total as well.
He's got a nearly 6-inch reach advantage over Damir in this spot too.
Yeah, and so these are my last 2 things that would persuade me. I have 2 last points. Yeah,
jump on board with you. You're getting me to jump on board with you here.
It's a dog play. The 2 last points that we'll make here is with Yancy. Is that Yancy? He's on a 3-fight losing streak, correct? And he hasn't looked maybe particularly great in that run. The Donald Cerrone fight at 170 pounds, right? The Gregor Gillespie fight, he drops back down to 55, but it's Gregor Gillespie. Lando Venata fight, it's at 55, but it's a tough guy, Lando. Prior to that, he fought Alex Oliveira at 170. He fought Eric Silva at 170. He fought Sean Spencer at 170. He won all those fights. He's a big dude for the weight class. I'd like to see him on the scales here, but if he's going to have that the reach, the output, the size, the experience.
We just need that
His
chin to hold
striking's
up.
good. He can lean on him. And if there had to be a last but not least, then this is it. I was backing Yancey in the first fight with Damir Hadzovic, which is scheduled for 4 weeks ago. You and I broke down the fight, and then Damir Hadzovic pulls out with health issues. 4 weeks ago. You're gonna give me dog money on Yancey Medeiros still? Oh yeah, it's the same here. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the dog play on Yancey.
All right.
And hope he doesn't get caught early. That's it.
All right, that wraps up our UFC breakdown for this week. Obviously, you got some stuff cooking on your own channel this week for Bellator and PFL.
Hells yeah, man. I like that Bellator card. Once we're finished this, I'm going to try to get that recording out. So hopefully, I don't want to crowd people with too much Cody because I don't know. Maybe they're not into that. But I'll try to get it out Wednesday night. Cody. I'd like to get it out the Bellator tonight and then PFL on Thursday because I'd really like seeing the PFL weigh-ins, man. They are such a shit show, man. I'll leave you with this because I almost decided not to do a PFL show. That last one, the way the judges screwed Rory, I thought to myself, Paul Shaughnessy, I'm going to find these guys down. I'm going to track them down to their home addresses, and I'm going to burn their houses to the ground. But then I caught myself in a moment of maturity, and I thought, Cody, you're not a kid anymore, which means you'll be trialed as an adult. And I ain't into that. So I decided not to. I swept it off my shoulder instead. And we're just going to get back on the pony. Like, I know PFL is dangerous. So let's put most of our stock in the UFC. I actually like the Bellator card. Put some chips in there. And for PFL, roll the dice. But almost certainly I'll be watching the Bellator card more favorably than the PFL. Why they're going Friday night head-to-head with Bellator? Be my guest. You've run all your other shows on Thursday. You have a little niche market spot on Thursday. Mm-hmm. Your fights might be garbage, but there's nothing else to do on a Thursday. And what do they do, Paul? They go head-to-head with Bellator. I don't know. You can't make up this shit. So for the UFC PRP, we're going to go with Ciryl Gane, Tanner Boser, Andre Fili, Kenny Nzechukwu, Nick Dalby, dog number 1, Renato Moicano, Randy Barcelos, Rakhmonov. Isaac Villanueva is going to be dog number 2, Worley Alves, Julia Avila, Charles Rosa, and Yancy Medeiros as dog number 3. So again, it's a 13-fight card. Is it feasible that 3 of the 10? Yeah, that seems about right. But the way cards have been going lately, like it could be 50-50. It could be more underdogs than favorites hitting. It is a little bit crazy and all over the place. And that's why bankroll management is key. There's 13 fights on the card. You don't get to bet all of them. And we still get a Bellator card. We still get a PFL card. So listen to the show, take the info that you like, discard the info that you don't like, compare notes with what you already think in your heart, and then make your decisions. But you don't got to force all these plays is the main thing. And so as far as I'm concerned, coming off such a bad week last week, the gods have given me a great opportunity here with 3 bettable cards. So PFL will probably screw it for me, but as long as I make the other 2 profitable, we'll make it a 2 out of 3 ain't bad type of weekend.
I fell asleep during the PFL card last week. And then when I woke up, it sounded like, so I don't, and the problem with PFL is like, I don't, can you go and find these fights again? Like they're on TSN up here in Canada. So it's like, I don't know if they're just like documented or like on the website or anything like that. So I couldn't even go back to like watch and see what had happened with that decision. But yeah, I mean that's the Atlantic time zone here, man. Things start late and it was a long day. I ended up falling asleep, I think, with like 3 or 4 fights left. I like woke up at like 2:00 in the morning and the fights were all over. The TV was on till like Sports Center or something like that.
Oh, well, dude, the reason I don't ever do recaps right after the event is like I struggle. I'm smoking weed the whole day. You know what I mean? By the time the main event comes on, like I'm fucking done, dude. Make the main event, watch the main event, and I go straight to bed afterwards. So the 1 hour time difference that you're now facing is a game changer, dude. Making it that extra hour, difficult. And whereas the UFC, you got the adrenaline pumping, you're good to go. That keeps you up. That Gleison versus Rory fight is not getting the adrenaline going. It was not a good fight anyways. And regardless, bad decision, sure. Robbery, sure. But not the worst decision I've ever seen, which I still reserve for 2 fights. One for me, I would say Boser and Kevin Randleman, and one for you. I know we agree on this one. Ross Pearson, Diego Sanchez. That's as bad as it gets.
If that fight's anywhere besides Albuquerque, New Mexico, there is no way Diego Sanchez ever comes away with a victory. Like, he just did not win that fight. All of the
I
stats,
still can't figure
their
that out.
faces, literally everything that you would ever look at like a fight and say, how do you judge how someone wins a fight? Ross Pearson won literally every avenue of that fight. Complete malarkey.
Yeah. My number 3, and then hit us up in the comment section. What's the worst decision you've ever seen in a UFC fight? But my number 3 is Bisping versus Matt Hamill, and again, it's in the UK. Matt Hamill totally wins pretty much the entire fight, and they somehow gift it to Bisping. Crazy, but yeah, if you can think of a great robbery, or even if you're new to the sport, like what's your personal worst decision you've ever seen? I'd be interested in seeing what some of people's selections are.
That is a smart idea. Leave that in the comment section. What's the worst robbery? If you've gotten this far into the show, God bless you. You are part of the Dogger Pass crew. All right, the bets that I've got this week. So Moicano, Herbert under 2.5 rounds, -135. I think that's fine up to like -150. I think it's worth a play. Either Moicano takes him down, is able to like just style on this guy on the ground. Honestly, Moicano could be fine on the feet too. He could land something big, or Herbert, exposes that chin that we've seen so many times. So the 1.5 in that fight, I don't love. I feel like 2.5 rounds, we should be able to see what's going on between those two guys. I got Prachnio versus Villanueva under 1.5 rounds +146. We're dealing with the bottom of the barrel here. And I feel like Prachnio's chin has been severely exposed in the past. Villanueva's chin has been severely exposed in the past. You put these two guys, watch, it's going to end up being like a real disgusting 3-round decision. But I thought plus money, both of these guys can get finished pretty early. Worth a shot. I'm going to play the Marques by decision. Anything plus 400 and up. There's not many spots that have it right now, but I've got enough books that I'll be able to find somebody who will let me play that game. So Marques by decision, I just think he's going to be able to find those takedowns, and we'll see if Kennedy's got the abilities against somebody with a little bit of a step up in the grappling game, and a big guy in his own right in Marques is able to take him down, control him, neutralize him. But I think that Kennedy's get-up game has been pretty decent from what I've seen so far. And then you sold me on Yancey. 6-inch reach advantage, plus 125 dog money. And then I'll add all of that to it. Yeah, 4 weeks ago, this guy had to pull out because he was sick. And you're still giving me plus money. Yancey, just hold, like, that chin. Just hold it up. If that chin just holds up, we win it. But that's it for me. So Yancey plus 125. Marques by decision plus 400 and up. Prachnio, Villanueva under 1.5 plus 146. And Moicano, Herbert under 2.5 -135. That is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For Cody Saftic, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.